Some people just view it as a trend, some people view it as an excuse. I kind of see it as it's something that affects our everyday life and affects what we do, how we live, how we work, how we play sports. I feel like it's just such a big thing and a big aspect of our lives, and society doesn't give kids with mental illness enough credit for how hard it is to do everyday functions, and they just kind of see it as something that's like, oh, nah, it's not that important. And I feel like we need to put much bigger impact and emphasis, thank you, a much bigger emphasis on what mental health can do for our work.
Society has improved a lot in how it views mental illness, but I still think it's fairly trivialized, and it's just as important as your physical health. Your mental health is equally important, and when it comes to studying, playing sports, doing whatever you do, it's good to have a healthiness in both of them, because without that, it's hard to do what you want. It can get frustrating. It can even get dangerous to a certain point. And I think we've made a lot of progress, but it needs to be better suited, because each individual has their own quirks, and each different thing has a different effect on people. So it has to be more developed as a science and brought more into the mainstream until it really does have that same significance that physical health does.
They view it very low, and it needs to be it needs to be brought more attention to it.
I think society views mental illness as it being a real thing, and they do take it seriously, but they also romanticize it a lot since it is talked about a lot, and a lot of people take that as a chance to self-diagnose and act however they feel like it.
I think as well we need to make it more of an individualized issue rather than such a black and white topic, because everybody looks at this differently, everybody responds differently, and everybody has different solutions to these kind of problems. Some people can go with friends, or some people can be alone and it helps them, but we really need to find what works for the specific person rather than trying to find a band-aid, like you said earlier, that just will apply to one person and fix everything.
I definitely view mental illness as being a real thing. It is a serious thing that needs to be talked about a lot. But I also think it is something that people take the chance to revolve their life around and hold them back when it is something that they can work on. Of course, with doctors being available to them, but you don't have to revolve your entire life around it.
I personally view mental illness as a very significant factor in other people's lives. I know people who, even though they might have the ability to get care, it's not the right kind of care. And you have to be there for your friends and your community and really go out there and support them. Try and respect their boundaries, do what they request, and try and get rid of the stigma. Mental health isn't a joke, it's a serious thing, and we've all seen the effects of it, whether on your own life or your friend's life or your family's life. It's a very important thing. I think that the best thing we can do is to respect each other and work together and just try and create a better environment and a better community and a more safer space for everyone to have their own ideas. And mental health is based on a lot of those things, and if we can work together and respect people and the way that they react to certain situations, I think it'll help a lot of people in mental health.
I think it could be really difficult to deal with, and I feel like we need to advocate therapy and stuff like that more, because it would be really helpful.
Personally, I feel like mental illness is something that definitely needs to be addressed, and it's not addressed enough as it should be. It's something that can impact things such as sports and academics, like she said, but it can really knock someone down a lot more than I think most people realize. So I definitely think it needs to be more addressed, and a better mental health can definitely help a better academic and a better athlete.
I feel at the moment, a reason a lot of people don't want to talk about it is because the environment's not safe for them. They feel uncomfortable, they just feel like these people are going to laugh at them when they say things, because they become a joke. Suicide's a joke, self-harm's a joke. We need to kind of reinvest these things with the sadness that's in them, and we need to take care of these people that are struggling with these thoughts. As somebody who's been there before, I always try to be there for people like that, because it's a difficult thing to understand by yourself. It's just confusing. So I think we need to make a better environment for people to be able to talk out.
Hello, VHS. Today we are launching our VHS Mental Wellness Literacy Program. Each month, we will bring to you a new Buffalo Charge session that will raise your awareness of a variety of topics related to mental health. Our goal is to provide you with strategies you can use to help yourself and others stay mentally fit and healthy. Here at VHS, we are very fortunate to have a mental health team of professionals who help students who may be struggling with their mental health. Mrs. Sharon Tapman is the coordinator of our mental health services. She has assembled a team of mental health professionals who work directly with students here at VHS, providing students support, strategies, and to help you maintain mental wellness. Over the next few months, Mrs. Tapman and our VHS school counselors will be conducting various sessions of our VHS Mental Wellness Literacy Program during the Buffalo Charge Hour. Today's session will be conducted by Mrs. Tapman. Thank you, Mrs. Tapman, for joining us today. Before we jump into today's topic, can you take a moment and share with us what it is meant when we say the word mental health literacy?
Certainly. Thank you so much for having me today. Mental health literacy is vitally important, more so than ever before. Did you know that 1 in 5 people in the United States have a mental illness? But only 44% of those who have a mental illness actually seek support or treatment. Research clearly shows that with strategies and support, most people can completely recover and enjoy mental wellness. I'm happy to be part of bringing this year's 2021 Mental Health Literacy Program to VHS so we can equip our students and staff to be mentally fit and healthy now and for the rest of their lives. Mental health literacy is very similar to literacy in math or reading. Mental health literacy is understanding how to obtain or get and maintain or keep good mental health. It is also understanding mental disorders and their treatments, and then recognizing and decreasing commonly associated stigma, as well as learning ways to recognize when you need help and then how to find or get that help. Today we'll be focusing on number 3, decreasing stigma surrounding mental illness and mental health. Throughout the year, we will learn more about those other topics, as well as practice strategies for maintaining good mental health. When our mental health literacy program is complete, we want everyone to be able to do 2 main things. The first one is to recognize and better understand mental wellness. And the second one is to use some strategies that we share with you to help others, as well as yourself, stay mentally fit and healthy. Our goal is to help everyone strive for mental wellness or mental well-being. So why is mental wellness so important? Let's take a look at what 1 in 5 means.
260 students at your school. 42 of your online friends. 34 musicians in the band. 20 performers from the school show. 12 players on the football team. 6 students in your math class. 1 in 5 people will develop a mental illness over the course of their adolescent years. You're surrounded by people who can relate, who can support you, who care about you, and who can help.
You are not alone. Here at VHS, you are surrounded by people who care about you, who can relate, and can help you manage your mental well-being. Unfortunately, there are many stigma associated with the terms mental illness and mental health. Let's hear from a professional psychiatrist who explains the stigma associated with mental illness.
All right, this is something that carries a negative stigma, one that doctors say that we can overcome. Right now, 1 in 5 Americans lives with it, and only 44% of adults with it seek the treatment that we need. We're talking about mental illness, but not everything we hear or think we know about it is true. So we're going to break it down and put it in focus for you. Here with us in studio now to debunk the myths, Dr. Drew Pate, a psychiatrist from the Shepherd Pratt Health System. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Kelly.
This is such a tough topic because of the whole stigma of being associated with mental illness. We haven't overcome that yet, have we?
No, when you look at the negative stereotypes about mental illness, they remain pretty entrenched in our society. And I think part of what we want to do by having these conversations with you and having conversations with people out in the community is remind them that there's nothing to be embarrassed by. As you said, 1 in 5 Americans at some time will have a significant impairing mental illness in their lives, so we're all touched by it in some way.
So what are some of the biggest myths that you would say are associated with mental illness?
I think the biggest ones that we see kind of perpetuated in the movies and in the mass media are around the violence, unpredictability of folks with mental illness, The truth is that almost all violence in this country has no connection to mental illness, and that those with mental illness are much more likely to be harmed than they are to harm someone else. But I think that's probably the one that scares people most and reinforces the stigma.
So what do you think the public can do to help people have a better understanding of mental illness?
I think part of it is we have to kind of remind ourselves that those preconceived determinations about individuals are not valid, and that we need to understand where everyone is coming from, and that we're all more than a diagnosis or more than a problem, whether it's mental illness or a medical condition. Who we are and our abilities have nothing to do with any diagnosis we've been given.
You know, I interviewed a county executive, Doug Duncan, from Montgomery County, and he talked about his history of depression and mental illness. And he's now in a campaign involved to educate people that you can still lead productive lives.
Right. And that's the most important message we can get out there. Individuals who have struggled with these issues, who have been impaired by them in some ways, but now have overcome and are living a life that no one could tell whether or not anything had ever happened for that person, are the most important advocates we can have. We can talk as professionals all the time, but people who've had the experience, who've overcome and been treated, which is what we always are advocating for, are the ones who can spread the message the best.
Medications, are they better than what they used to be? I know that used to always be a concern.
Yeah, we have a tremendous range of medications now. With the newer medicines, have very few side effects. They're very well tolerated, and the expectation is that they should help you a tremendous amount. So it's important to talk with your doctor about that, make sure that you're being assessed for medications, but also getting the right kind of therapy, the right kind of treatment to help your thinking, because that's another huge piece with mental illness. It clouds our thinking and helps us and interferes with our normal day-to-day lives.
Did you catch some of those powerful statements made by Dr. Pate? He said, we're more than a diagnosis or a problem, that you are more than a diagnosis or a problem. Who we are and our abilities have nothing to do with any diagnosis that we've been given. According to Dr. Pate, the most powerful message or important message that we can get out there is this: individuals who have struggled with these issues or have been impaired by these issues in some way have now overcome them and are living a life that you would never know that they ever struggled previously. That there is hope, there's support out there, there are treatments and therapies and even some medicines. But we want you to reach out for help by talking to a trusted adult at home, at school, or in your community. At the start of today's session, you heard from a few of our VHS students about what they think about mental health. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Teachers at this time facilitate a class discussion with your students, allowing a variety of students time to share their perspectives regarding these two questions. Take a moment to consider the first question. How does society view mental health? You now have a few minutes to discuss this as a class. Now think about this. Take a few more minutes to discuss how you view mental health. Teachers, please allow your students to spend a few more additional minutes to discuss how they themselves, as individuals, view mental health. Now that you've had a few moments to discuss various views on mental health and wellness, I hope you can see we all have a wide range of thoughts about this topic and different perspectives. Take a moment to watch this short clip of what a few celebrities have to say about mental health.
Well, I think it's a good thing for anyone to talk about it, no matter what your station in life is. And, for me to talk about it, a lot of people might project this image onto me that I have it all, or I'm, but, that sort of thing, it doesn't discriminate, it gets anyone from any sort of walk of life. And it's, for me, it was just talking about it sort of destigmatizes it. Talking about it for me has helped. There's a lot of dudes out there that have a tendency to sort of bottle it up and keep it in and think that they've got to be a tough guy and soldier on, but that's not necessarily true.
Brianne Hill, hello.
I think anybody talking about it will help destigmatize it over time. But I think in particular celebrities or sports celebrities, if they have a platform and they've gone through any kind of issue with mental health, it's good for them to share their stories if they're comfortable with it, because not a lot of people are comfortable, and that's okay. I think, for me as a guy, I struggled a long time with not only my bouts of depression that I've had, but also things that have happened to me earlier on and when I was a teenager that colored me as an adult, but struggled a long time to just express myself. Look, any opportunity I can to share an experience or share a little bit of insight that I've gained over the years when it comes to mental health and kind of battling things, I'm happy to share it. And if it helps out one person, it sounds very cliche, but I'm happy to do it.
The notion of being stigma-free, which is sort of, what many of us are willing to be, is a way to try and bring education to more people, since unfortunately in this country, it seems that mental health is something that's reserved for people who can afford it and not people who need it. So, I'm not looking to, vomit my entire life onto the internet, but I do feel it's very appropriate, especially for so many young people who feel alone, the way I felt alone, to talk about anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder and panic disorder and depression and all the other things that many of us deal with, when we're teenagers and even when we're, adults.
Throughout history, there have been many celebrities and famous people like musicians, scientists, doctors, and even presidents who have been very influential and vocal about their journey toward mental wellness. Their message is one of hope for wellness and recovery. However, let's hear from someone just like you, a student who overcame her severe anxiety to produce this TED Talk. Let's take a look.
You would never say to someone with a broken bone to just ignore their pain. That'll just pass one day. You would never say about someone who has cancer that they're just faking it. It's just all for attention. You would never say to someone in a wheelchair, just stand up. It's all in your head. He would obviously never say that to any of these kinds of people because they didn't ask for it in their life. It's not like they chose to put it in their life. It should be the same for any other sickness or disability. No one asked to put this into their life, so they can't just snap out of it. Unfortunately, many people with mental illness have been told at least once in their life, just snap out of it. Trust me, if I could snap out of my anxiety and my depression, I would have done it long before anybody had to tell me. My illness isn't physically visible to you. You can't look at me and tell that I've been diagnosed with anxiety and depression. I mean, you can't really tell anyone who's mentally sick, and that's why it's kind of doubted in our society, because you just can't see it. The only people who can feel it are the people who have it. They can feel the battle inside them. I try not to blame myself for my anxiety and depression. I mean, as I said before, I didn't put it in my life. I didn't ask for it. It's just a result of the neurons in my brain working kind of abnormally. Many people have it because of a childhood trauma, or just it runs through genetics. It runs through my family. A family member of mine has also been diagnosed with anxiety and depression. She also had postpartum depression after having her children. She was fine for a little bit, but almost 10 years after having her last child, she admitted herself into a mental hospital for suicidal thoughts. She made the beyond correct decision to go get help. I hope when I say mental hospital, you don't picture this. Because in movies and stuff, it looks more like a jail, like a torture chamber where patients look more like prisoners. Even when I was looking up pictures for my slides, I could barely find a picture of what a mental hospital actually looks like. And it doesn't look much different than any other hospital wing. It's light and bright, and a lot of patients really do get better. My family member, she would send us coloring pages. She would call us and tell us how much better she was doing now that she had full-on access to a therapist. It's been almost a year and a half since she's been released from the hospital, and she's doing better. She owned her own business for a while. She is doing great at a new job, and she has a family that loves and cares for her. She is one of the greatest people I know. She's strong, and I look up to her every single day. My relative was lucky to get the treatment that she got in our society. Our society is very judgmental when it comes to mentally sick. Society tends to ostracize those who say that they're sick by calling them just crazy or overreacting. So that makes people who are sick tend to want to hide themselves. I've always stayed quiet, and so has everyone else in my family. But I don't want to be quiet about my illness anymore. I shouldn't be afraid to tell who I am. So as I said before, I've got anxiety and depression. I was diagnosed with anxiety when I was in 3rd grade. I would kind of just cry, like all the time, for no reason, or at least no reason that seemed rational. So I spent a lot of hours in the guidance counselor, and then I finally went to therapy. And it's been great. I love therapy. I mean, who doesn't want to sit in a room for an hour to someone who has to listen to you talk? It's helped me so much. I mean, therapy hasn't really gotten rid of my depression and anxiety, but more taught me how to beat it, how to cope with it. For example, in my late middle school years and my early years as a freshman in high school, I had a lot of depression. I was kind of just not really sad, but more felt nothing, felt worthless. And I kept going to therapy, and my therapist taught me, you can deal with it. Your mental illness is just an old-fashioned supervillain, and you're a superhero. You can beat it to the ground. So that's how therapy has helped me. Unfortunately, society hasn't just stigmatized therapy, but it's also stigmatized mental illness. It's so common to hear people say, wow, I'm so OCD because that thing just isn't lined up properly, or wow, that's so retarded. People shouldn't be saying these. If you've never had anxiety, you don't know what it feels like to have the entire world crashing around you for basically nothing. If you've never had depression, you don't know what it feels like to feel worthless, so don't make a joke about it. In a world where 1 in 5 adults have a mental illness, don't say how depressed you are because your favorite TV show ended. And don't say you're going to kill yourself and make tapes because your Starbucks barista didn't get your order correctly. It's not appropriate to say these anymore. It's TED is all about ideas we're sharing, and the idea I want to share with you all today is be nicer to people. I mean, it seems like such a basic message, but you never know what's going on in someone else's head. So just be nicer, and make sure if you know someone with a mental illness that they know you're not judging them because of their mental illness. When I wrote this talk, I thought, how much should I share about myself? Should I just say I've got anxiety? Should I just say I've got depression? It's all been really personal my entire life. But then I realized that's why I wrote it. I shouldn't have to hide who I am anymore. It's hard enough working with this mental illness itself. So I should be comfortable in my own skin, and so should anyone else. Thank you.
I hope you could appreciate Sam Cohen's courage to stand up and share her story despite her struggles with anxiety and depression. Do you think someone with anxiety would find that task easy or hard? Even though it is quite obvious that Sam is very nervous, she wants you to understand that there is hope for you and that you can achieve mental wellness, and that if she can do that, you can do anything you set your mind to as well. Let's review some important points that Sam makes. She said you would never tell someone with a physical illness like cancer or the flu to just snap out of it or assume that the illness was their choice or somehow their fault. She said that some treatments for mental illness can be very scary, but that there's hope for recovery and that they're really not all that scary after you think about it. The next thing she said is negative words and phrases surrounding the stigma of mental illness only makes it harder for people to seek help or treatment. Mental illness is like a supervillain. But remember, you are a superhero, and you can take charge of your mental wellness. So what was Sam's answer to all of this? She said, be nicer to others. You never know when someone else is struggling or what they're struggling with. We want to be kind. And then she said, be comfortable in your own skin. Don't be afraid to be you. Be you and be confident. This year, we are going to ask you to help us reduce the stigma and myths surrounding mental health. And we hope we can give you some strategies to help you be in control of your own mental wellness and maybe equip you with some simple, everyday habits that just might help you help others. You will see pinwheels popping up everywhere as a symbol to help you remember the lessons we're going to learn and our goal of making VHS a healthy and fit environment for mental health. Let's get started on that goal by discussing the myths and realities that surround mental illness. Let's take a closer look at the myths, the realities, and ways to live stigma-free in our teenmentalhealth.org Module 1. Teachers, at this time, please pass out handout number 1. It says page 58 to students. Please read along as I read aloud the definition of stigma on your handout. In order to better understand the myths associated with mental illness, let's first take a look at your Module 1 Stigma handout. What are we talking about when we use the word stigma? What exactly do we mean when we talk about the stigma of mental illness? Let's take a look at what each of these terms mean. Stigma refers to a cluster of negative attitudes and beliefs that motivate the general public to fear, reject, avoid, and discriminate against people with mental illnesses. Stigma is not just a matter of using the wrong word or action. Stigma is about disrespect. It is the use of negative labels to identify a person living with mental illness. Stigma is a barrier. Fear of stigma and the resulting discrimination discourages individuals and their families from getting the help they need. There are 3 terms related to stigma. You'll see at the bottom of your handout. The first one is stereotype. Stereotype is a person or thing that conforms to an unjustly fixed impression or attitude. Stereotypes are the attitudes about a group of people. For example, someone might say, all people with mental illness are dangerous. But we know that that's not true. That's a stereotype. The next term is prejudice. Prejudice is a preconceived opinion. Prejudice is agreeing with the stereotypes. For example, saying something like, I think people with mental illness are dangerous, without really knowing or understanding they are literally prejudging. Discrimination is an unfavorable treatment based on prejudice. So that brings us to the last word, discrimination. It is that unfavorable treatment based on prejudice, and it's a behavior that may result from a stigma, For example, someone might say things like, I don't want people with mental illness around me, therefore I'm against them and I'm not going to hire them or maybe not be their friend. That's called discrimination. Let's take a look at some common myths about mental illness and let's debunk them. Myths contribute strongly to stigma against people who have a mental illness. Challenging myths with data and with scientific knowledge is one way to decrease stigma. And myth busting or debunking may also help decrease stigma. So what are some common categories of myths surrounding mental illness that we can commonly hear? These are myths about what causes mental illness, myths about what people are like who have a mental illness or a condition, myths about the treatment for mental illness, and just some myths that we need to debunk. Now let's discuss some common myths about mental illness and debunk them with reality. The myth says mental illnesses are caused by evil forces, but reality is that mental illnesses are the result of disturbances and usual brain function that lead to difficulties with the control of feelings, thinking, and behaviors, and not due to any evil forces. Our next slide, and the myth there says that mental illness is a sign of personal weakness. But the reality is, mental illness is a brain disorder and not a personal weakness. The next slide myth says, mental illnesses are caused by the stresses of everyday life. The reality there is, everyday life stresses are normal and necessary for learning and developing life skills. They do not cause mental illness. The next myth says people with mental illness could snap out of it if they wanted to. Well, we know the reality is that people with mental illness may often feel embarrassed or that they are inferior to others or that they experience low self-esteem and low confidence. This is called self-stigma and is made worse by myths others have about people with mental illness. Our next myth is that mental illnesses are too difficult to treat. But the reality is that mental illnesses sometimes need more complex treatments because they affect how the brain functions. But this does not mean that they're too difficult to treat. Our last myth says that people with mental illness will never get better. The reality there is that most people with a mental illness will get well and stay well, and the right treatment, just like treatments for physical health, will help them. Also, mental illnesses, because they affect how the brain functions, sometimes need more complex treatments, but this does not mean that they're too difficult to treat. Now that we've discussed some myths and stigma related to mental health, let's take a look to see if you can also be stigma-free by taking this short quiz. Let's look at some questions from the quiz, and let's kind of do this together and see what you can get as your answers. The first question on the quiz says, I think people with mental illnesses blank. A, need to snap out of it. B, did something wrong to cause it. C, need our love and support. Or D, are sometimes faking it. Were you able to come up with the right answer? Of course, the answer is C. People with mental illnesses need support from others. They can't snap out of it. It's not something they did wrong to cause it, and it's not a choice. The reality is, most people don't even fake it. Which of the following is not true about stigma and mental health? A, it makes people feel alienated or feel less than. B, it's not really a big problem for people with mental conditions. C, it prevents people from seeking help for symptoms. Or D, it makes people fear judgment if they share their story. You'll see the statement that is not true about stigma and mental health is answer choice B. It is not really a big problem for people with mental health conditions. So remember our question said which of the following is not true about stigma and mental health? And it is that it's not really a big problem. That's not true. It is a big problem for people who have mental health conditions. And it's a big issue if we stigmatize them. So that answer is B. The next question says, if someone in your family is diagnosed with a mental illness, you should A, treat them differently than you normally would. B, distance yourself from them. C, feel sorry for them. Or D, listen to them and show support. I bet you got that one correct. Yes, if someone you care about is diagnosed with a mental illness, you should always listen without judgment and do all you can to support them. Great job. I bet you got those all right. You're already there. Teachers, at this time, if you would please pass out the double-sided handout labeled Reducing Stigma, What Works? Students, I'm only going to share some highlights from this handout, but please be sure to take a moment to read the handout on your own and keep it as a resource as we build upon this and other resources during our Buffalo Charge sessions this year. So what can we all do to reduce the stigma? See the person, not the stigma. What does that mean? Remember what Dr. Pate said? We are more than just a label or a diagnosis, whether that diagnosis is for a physical illness or a mental illness. Take, for example, a person who has cancer may be consumed with their recovery process for a long period of time, but they are still the same person they were before they were diagnosed with cancer. Likewise, a person with a mental illness is the same. There may be a period of time that they're working toward their mental wellness and recovery. So why should we treat someone with a mental illness any differently than someone with a physical illness? The next point says, learn more about mental illness, which is one of our goals for our mental literacy program. In every clip we viewed earlier, from Dr. Pate to Sam to the celebrities, there was a common theme. Get educated about mental health and mental well-being to help reduce harmful stigma associated with mental health. Watch your language, listen more, and judge less. Use supportive language versus language that perpetuates the stigma or makes the stigma worse, and avoid harmful words that might prevent someone from seeking help. This goes hand in hand with the next item. Talk responsibly about mental illness. So what does that mean? Well, let's use the example Sam used. If you were to visit the coffee shop or your local coffee shop and the barista happened to get your order wrong, you probably shouldn't then post on social media that you plan on killing yourself or you're going to kill yourself because your coffee order was wrong. We have to be careful about the words that we use. We also need to be aware that our culture uses stigma and we need to speak out about it and how harmful it is. Let others know that jokes about mental health aren't funny and they are disrespectful to those who struggle to maintain their mental well-being. You never know if that one joke or remark keeps someone from seeking help. And finally, provide support to those that need it and be kind. You never know if your one small act of kindness or support has made all the difference in someone's life. What did Sam say that was the answer? Just be kind. Now that we know about how to help get rid of the stigma surrounding mental illness, we're going to ask you to do your part in making VHS a mentally healthy environment that is also stigma-free. Teachers, at this time, please pass out the stigma-free pledge sheets to your class. Each student who signs and turns in the stigma-free pledge to their Buffalo Charge teacher today will be allowed to pick a mental health awareness item from the bag of goodies. And they are some really good goodies. But these items will help represent your pledge to be stigma-free here at VHS. Students, can you agree to help listen more and judge less? Will you avoid using harmful words that prevent people from seeking help? And will you do your part to make VHS stigma-free? If so, join us by signing the pledge to be stigma-free. By signing this pledge, you agree to this. I promise to support those affected by mental health conditions by listening more and judging less. I won't use harmful words that prevent people from seeking help. I will do my part to make VHS stigma-free. Now that you've had an opportunity to sign the pledge to be stigma-free, let's take it one step further. Small moments make big differences. Just being kind is the first step in helping make VHS mentally healthy and fit. Just like exercise is important for our physical health, experiencing positive emotions like joy, gratitude, inspiration, and pride are important for taking care of our mental health. So how can you help today? Choose an act of kindness. What kindness can you offer to someone here at VHS? Write this on your sticky note, and then go do it. One act of kindness will not only make a difference in someone else's day, but will make just a big of difference in your day as well. Teachers, in just a moment, we will be concluding today's Buffalo Charge session. Once the video has concluded, please allow students time to write their act of kindness on their sticky note. Once all students have had an opportunity to share with the class, please collect these sticky notes as an exit ticket for today's Buffalo Charge session. These notes will be displayed in our glass hallway for everyone to view. We look forward to seeing all of your acts of kindness in action and celebrating being stigma-free here at VHS.
Thank you, Mrs. Chapman, for sharing this important information with us on mental health. We do appreciate your time and your expertise. VHS, that's it for now. Until next time, together we are Buffalo Strong.